Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Pebble Beach Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into. I want to look at the prior leaderboards, not only for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, but also when Pebble Beach hosted the U.S. Open in 2019. Dig into a lot of the data there in the prior leaderboards, figure out the top players at the metrics that we conclude are going to be the most prominent this week at Pebble Beach. So I want to hear from you all. What wagers have you made so far? Who are you targeting? All that good stuff. We got a fun show, so let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great golf analytics tools out there, no doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I posted research earlier today around the past 7 winners of the Pebble Beach Pro-Am going back to 2017. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do every week on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site, X or Instagram. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests that I play. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X as well. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's social media handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It comes out every Sunday to get you prepared for the week at hand. And then he will update you with his own version of recent form and course history. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, by the way, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening after calls as we continue the DFS talk over in his Substack chat. So go show Gabe some support, follow him over on social media, and subscribe to that article. It's free to do so. You won't regret it. He provides you a lot of great information to help you with your week's research, complimentary to calls. And then lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. Again, what wagers have you made? Who are you targeting early on this week in your lineups for your DFS contests at Pebble Beach? How much do you know of Spyglass Hill? All that good stuff. Would love to hear from the community. And before I forget, I do have one shout out to give. Subscriber named Steven reached out to me in the comments of the show last night. Let me know that he had Matthew Pavone. I tried to follow up with him. I don't know if he had him outright from the beginning of the tournament at 140 or if that was a mid-tournament wager. Either way, it's a very, very excellent hit on your part, Steven. So congratulations on hitting Matthew Pavone. And we're going to try to continue the positive momentum that we have built. This time, try to get the winner across the finish line here at Calls at the beginning of the PGA Tour season. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And we are going to start, as we always do on a Monday evening, with Windfinder, and utter chaos is what is going to happen, at least in the forecast. Now, today did not look too bad, nor tomorrow, but you see Wednesday and you see a whole lot of wind and a whole lot of rain coming in, at least forecast wise, Wednesday evening. Now Thursday supposed to be very calm with the winds, but cold and wet. So at least as of right now, we are looking at the possibility of delays, if not an outright pushback, or delay to a later day, later tee times. But Thursday, looks cold, looks wet, especially if they get the rains that they're expected to get extremely late Wednesday evening. And then Friday looks like a complete soaking as well, cold, wet. Saturday looks like the best day so far in the forecast, but the coldest, high of 50, but very little wind, very little moisture on Saturday. And then Sunday is in the forecast. That's right. You're seeing 70 mile-an-hour gusts, at least projected 72 hours out from the start of the tournament. So this looks like complete and utter chaos right now in terms of trying to get this tournament in this week with all the moisture, with all the wind that's in play as well. This looks like it could be another Players' Championship from a couple years ago. Honestly, it just looks horrendous. Monday doesn't look really much better. A little bit of rain, but a whole lot of wind as well. So we're going to have to keep on top of the forecast moving forward into tomorrow. And then, of course, I will absolutely update this for you all come Wednesday evening for the DFS Tactics show. Nothing really to analyze too deeply, just because the super forecast only goes to Wednesday, and you see it's showing, all that wind, all that rain in the super forecast for Monterey Peninsula and Pebble Beach. But with that, I will come back and show you the extended forecast one more time. Thursday, Friday looks cold and wet. Saturday looks okay, just cold or chilly. And then Sunday looks just absolute hell. With that, we're going to move to Fantasy National. And because of that forecast, I went ahead and looked at the moderate and windy conditions. You'll just have to trust me since it's getting cut off. The moderate and windy filters are selected. In moderate and windy conditions in the past 12 months, our top total performers have been Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Tyrrell Hatton, Xander, Wyndham Clark, Corey Connors, Jordan Spieth, Rory, and Denny McCarthy. Those are your top 10 total performers in moderate and windy conditions. So if this forecast indeed holds, especially through tomorrow, perhaps even into early Wednesday, these are the players that you're probably going to want to give a significant boost to in your wager considerations, and especially in your DFS lineups, as the wind just looks like a major factor this week. At the other end of the spectrum, players who have not done well in the wind: Eric Van Rooyen, Tom Hoagie, Seamus Power, Tom Kim, Webb Simpson, Matt McNeely, Davis Riley, Mac Hughes, and so on down. Not including the players that are starred. Those players are alternates for the moment. With that said, there is one player that is on the fence. He is still listed as in the field for the moment. However, I believe it has been confirmed that he is joining LIV, and that's Tyrrell Hatton. I believe Tyrrell Hatton has confirmed to join the LIV. He is still listed in the field per the PGA Tour website. But I would be very hesitant moving forward this week with Tyrrell Hatton, because I do not think he is going to end up playing. I think he has joined LIV. So I will keep him unstarred for the moment, but I do think he has joined LIV. I want to make that very clear from the beginning of the show tonight. All right, with that, we're going to remove the moderate and windy filters. We took a look last night at the course breakdown, and everything seemed to lean towards the difficult end, especially for Pebble Beach and Spyglass. Excuse me. So I am tempted to use the difficult rounds to par. The only reason I wouldn't is because of that forecast. There are moments this week where the wind has died down, and with all that moisture, I would expect them to be playing ball in hand, and these greens are going to be extremely receptive. That's the only reason I am a little bit hesitant to use the difficult round to par or difficult relative to par filter. Even with that said, I think I'm still going to look at in the last 12 months just to get an idea because it does appear that Sunday is going to be a complete chaotic mess. Thursday didn't look all that great either. So when rounds are difficult relative to par, your top performers have been Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Xander, Jordan Spieth, Patrick Cantlay, Tyrrell Hatton, put a little asterisk there, Max Homa, and Colin Morikawa. Those are your top 10 in terms of total performance when rounds are difficult. The other end of the spectrum, Eric Van Rooyen, Tom Hoagie, Grayson Murray, Peter Malnati, Matt Kuchar, Webb Simpson, Nick Dunlap, only 2 rounds, so take that a little bit with a grain of salt. Luke List, Sam Ryder, and on down. Those players have not been good in the past 36 rounds or 12 months when rounds have been difficult. So again, depending on how you view the scenario of the forecast, whether you think they're just going to play through it and have to play through all that wind, then really consider these players here a lot higher in your wagers and in your DFS lineups. If you think they try to dodge that a little bit, play when the winds are down with all the moisture that's been in the area leading up to the tournament and seemingly through the tournament, I would have to guess that this is going to be ball in hand for a lot of this week, and because of that, I do think there is a strong possibility that it doesn't play difficult with ball in hand and the fact that these greens are so receptive. So take that how you will. I wanted to show you the difficult relative to par in case you feel strongly about it. But all right, let's go ahead and take a look at some prior leaderboards, dig into some deep data dive of Pebble Beach. We'll start with the past few Pebble Beach Pro-Ams. Again, this is going to be skewed because most of the time the Pebble Beach Pro-Am only has 2 rounds of shot link data in it. Normally they have Monterey Peninsula and Spyglass. It's a 54-hole cut, so it's going to be a little bit different this year, but this is just to give us an idea of the metrics that are going to be the most important, we think, this week. So if we take a look at last year and Justin Rose's win, we talked a lot last night how off the tee doesn't really come into play. You can see that Justin Rose was negative relative to the field. In fact, everybody inside the top 19, just due to ties. There's one more player right underneath. It's Taylor Moore. But, the top number here is a 2.8, whereas in the approach, you've got a couple of 4.5s from Brandon Wu and Peter Malnati, 4.7 from Kevin Yu. A few more players negative, sure, but nothing too astronomically deep in the negative. Around the green, surprisingly, has a lot of players negative, and putting has a lot of players negative. So if we sort on this, off the tee, again, the leader was at a 2.8. There's just not a whole lot to be gained off the tee at Pebble Beach. These fairways are fairly wide, and especially with it being ball in hand, there's going to be an added emphasis, or at least what I think is going to be ball in hand. There's going to be an added emphasis in fairways, so everybody's going to be trying to hit fairways anyway. There are forced layups, so distance doesn't really play a factor. I don't see off the tee providing much this week. Having said that, there is a little bit of correlation here with the top 10, a runner-up, a top 5, a top 10. A little bit here. Approach, much stronger, as you can tell. Now, you do have a couple of miscuts quite a bit higher up here. Marcel Siem, Kyle Westmoreland, but a couple of top 30s, top 15, top 10, top 5, runner-up, top 20, top 10. A lot more correlation between the approach and the high leaderboard finishes than off the tee. Around the green, actually not all that much last year. You have several miscuts surrounded by some stellar finishes. Top 15, or 2 top 15s. Middling from Ben on. Your winner was fairly high around the green. You do have a runner-up up here. Okay. A little disconcerting that so many miscuts are high up on the around the green leaderboard, and then putting. Even though when you sorted on the leaderboard, there were quite a few players that were negative in putting. You look, runner up, top 5, top 10, top 5, top 10, all very high up here. Putting is still going to be a pretty important factor. If we look at 2022 and strokes gained, let's see. We'll look at the top 15. There you go. Top 15 due to ties. Off the tee, only one player negative, but again, there's just not a whole lot to be gained. I mean, 2.1 is the highest here. Approach, now Patrick Cantlay was very poor in the approach, but most everybody else was fairly solid. I mean, a 4 from Hoagie and a 5.8 from Jordan Spieth, a 4.5. Around the green, still kind of hit and miss, but putting was a lot more correlating for the players that finished in the top 15. If we sort, again, 2.7 being the highest number and off the tee, not a lot to be gained there. I mean, you get some cut making, but not a whole lot there. The approach, much higher. Second, fourth, 33rd from Russell Knox because he was just piss poor on the greens. Your winner was fourth in approach, top 20. Excuse me. I mean, you do have a miscut, but lots of strong correlation here in the approach, and I would expect that to continue this week, especially with that forecast with ball in hand. Around the green, as much as I wanted to think that around the green was going to play a pretty big factor, it kind of just hasn't the past 2 years. As you can see, it just kind of hasn't. And then putting, fairly strong with the exception of Brian Gay, this miscut up here, but top 25, top 20, your winner. Middling to clunker from Matthias Schwab. Third, top 15, top 10, top 20. So, as per usual, approach and putting going to be the two major shot types we look at. I still think around the green is going to be somewhat of a factor because of how small these greens are. But it certainly is less based on that forecast with the ball in hand. I also want to show or go and look at the 2019 U.S. Open. This isn't going to be as useful as I would, or as it normally would be, because all 4 rounds of the U.S. Open obviously were at Pebble Beach. It was set up as a major, so the course was extremely, the most difficult that they could make Pebble Beach. Not quite like the AT&T Pro-Am, because they have amateurs playing, so they can't make it too terribly tough on a week like this. But at a major, you generally get the top players in the world, so I thought there was enough correlation here that we could at least look at it. With that being the case, again, looking at the top 15, just due to ties, all of the approach. Not a single player negative in approach in the top 15. In fact, you have to go all the way down to 49th before you get the first negative in approach. So approach was huge for the U.S. Open in 2019. Off the tee, now you do have Xander and Rory with some big numbers in here, but still fairly lukewarm in terms of correlation. Bubba was a miscut who was very good off the tee, and Thomas Peters and Chan Kim. Sure, you have some excellent finishes, top 10, top 15, third. But when you compare that to, say, the approach, your winner was second in approach, runner-up, third. You don't see a miscut in here with the approach. It's much more correlating. Around the green, a lot stronger than what we've seen the past couple of years in the regular Pro-Am. Top 20s, third. A clunker from Scott Piercy, to be fair. He was very good around the green, but not good at anything else, really. Adam Scott's top 10, third, top 10, top 15. So around the green, much more a factor, which you would expect for the U.S. Open. And then putting, huge amounts of correlation, at least for the extreme top end of the putting leaderboard. Top 10, top 20, middling to clunker from Putnam, and then winner, third, ninth. So with that, we're going to come over to the player page view this week. Make sure I don't have any filters selected. That way I don't give you bad data. In the past 36 rounds, just flat out last 36 rounds, no filters. Our top strokes gain approach players have been Scotty Scheffler, Lucas Glover, Colin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele, Sam Ryder, Alex Smalley, Mark Hubbard, Hideki, Eric Cole, and Chris Kirk. Looking at around the green a little bit, I don't know how I want to handle a filter for around the green because there is no greens difficult to hit filter. The best you would probably do is scoring relative to par difficult, but I don't. Again, for reasons that I talked about earlier, I don't know if this will truly play difficult because of what I think will be ball in hand for a lot of the tournament. So we'll just look at around the green, and it very well could end up not be ending up in the final mixed condition model Wednesday evening. But for now, I think I would put in a little bit around the green. So your top around the green players in the last 36 rounds: Ricky Fowler, Scotty Scheffler, Russell Henley, S.H. Kim, Brendan Todd, Wyndham Clark, J.J. Spawn, Matt Fitzpatrick, Justin Thomas, and Alex Noren. Skipping Sam Stevens, he is an alternate. He is not in the field yet, or as of now. All right, lastly, let's take a look at some putting. We're going to sort on the 3 courses that have Poa annua greens, and we get shot link. So, obviously, Pebble Beach. We're going to look at Riviera, the host of the Genesis Invitational, where we'll be in a couple weeks. And where we were last week, Torrey Pines South. So we'll apply those course filters. I'm going to back this out to the last 2 years. Now, understand this is a pretty small sample size, only going back 2 years and 3 courses. It's just the best that we can do. Fantasy National has overhauled their site. A lot of things, much for the better. But one of the things I do miss is the fact that I could have I used to be able to put a custom time frame into here. Now I can't. I can just only go back 2 years. It is what it is. Your top performers, your top putters at or on Poa annua the past couple years: Max Homa, Denny McCarthy, Jason Day, Taylor Montgomery, Peter Malnati, Mav McNeely, S.H. Kim, Sam Ryder, Adam Schenk, and Mackenzie Hughes. All right. Get this prepared. I will bring this back into the past calendar year or 36 rounds. Get this prepared for the fairways and greens. Let's go ahead and take a look at driving. Fairways and greens page view. I'm going to tell you now, I just don't see anything in terms of distance. I just don't. I mean, the top 4 last year were all negative in distance. It's just not a factor. Generally speaking, it can help you, sure, but there are some forced layups around Pebble Beach. You've got some short par 4s. It's just distance generally isn't a factor, as you can see here from last year. Now, fairways could be a different story because of all the rain and the ball in hand and all that. So, fairways gained might be something that we want to look at, but I'm absolutely going to be looking at greens. There are some huge numbers in here: 10.1, 8.1, 9.7, 7.1 a little bit further down. What you don't see, other than Brendan Todd, are some massive negatives in here. Brendan Todd found a whole lot of the fairways. He just wasn't very good at gaining greens. If we sort on this, however, you've got quite a bit of correlation, not as strong as I would have thought it would have been. Charlie Hoffman was a clunker of a made cut, but a runner up here, top 15, a top 10, a couple of top 20s, and some huge numbers in here. If we sort on the fairways, a decent bit of correlation. Now you got miscut a little bit higher, some higher finishes, but some pretty big numbers in of themselves. But distance, however, I mean, 2 miscuts up here, 2 miscuts there. 7th lead, that's pretty good, but that's kind of Joseph Branlett's game anyway, so so I wouldn't get too carried away with that. If we look at 2022 and go with fairways and greens, distance a little bit more so, but then falls off again. Looking at the top 15, just due to ties, again, a lot in the greens. You got a 7.1 and a 9.1 and an 8.1. Decent amount in the fairways as well, except for Bo Hostler, who didn't seemingly hit a fairway the entire week, at least with ShotLink. If we sort, pretty bad up top. Gets okay. Fairly high miscut from Peter Jakobsen. Greens, you got your cut making surrounded with some stellar performances. Middling Russell Knox, middling probably from Trey Mullinax, top 10, top 15, your winner in 2022, fairly high in the greens, top 20, top 5, top 10. So greens is really kind of where it's at. And I do think a little bit in the fairways because, again, of all the reasons I've said, ball in hand and all that stuff. So, actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and take a look at the U.S. Open driving and greens. Now, driving distance, probably a little bit more of a factor for the U.S. Open setup. Probably not as much here, but again, top 15, only one player negative in greens game. Let me swivel out. Which way do I need to go here? Out that way. Swivel that way to get out of the way. Only one player negative in greens gained. Look at the top 2 here. 11.2, 13.2. Massive numbers. 2nd, 1st, 7th. Top 15 from Victor Hovland. 35th, 28th. Does fall off, to be fair, a little bit. But huge, massive numbers here up at the very top of the leaderboard when Pebble Beach hosted the U.S. Open. Also with good drives gained as well. A lot of correlation in good drives gained. So with that, let me get this set for the scoring. In the field this week, I need to bring in all courses, not just Poa Annua. In the last 36 rounds, we could potentially look at scoring difficult to par. Let's go ahead and do that. Your top performers or your top fairways gained players when a round is difficult. Those players have been Russell Henley, Siwoo Kim, Patrick Cantlay, Sepp Straka, Lucas Glover, Brian Harmon, Tom Kim, Brendan Todd, Lee Hodges, and Colin Morikawa. Really, only one player is positive in distance and fairways. It's Patrick Cantlay. How much does off the tee really matter? I have my doubts. I would be more so focused on the fairways portion here, especially since distance doesn't really seem to matter. But what we really want to look at is greens, and take a look at greens when scoring is difficult. So, when scoring is difficult relative to par, your top greens gained players: Scotty Scheffler and Xander, Colin Morikawa, Patrick Cantlay, Wyndham Clark, Tom Kim, Victor Hovland, Sepp Straka, Emiliano Grillo, and Rory are your top 10 at gaining greens when a round is difficult relative to par. We could also look difficult and short courses. This is going to be very, very narrow. Very narrow. I'll bring this out to the last 2 years. I'm really thinking there's only 2 to 3 courses. It would be, so Adam Shank, there are 3 courses. The Honda, or what used to be the Honda, it is called the Cognizant Classic now. I don't even know if this will bring them up. So you got the Honda, the Zozo, but that's international. How much do you really want to factor into that? The Wells Fargo in 2022 was played at a different course. It was played at TPC Potomac, not at Quail Hollow, because Quail Hollow is definitely not short. RBC Heritage could play difficult. it's a decent possibility. But in the past 2 years, not a whole lot of rounds here on short and difficult. You're really looking at Pebble Beach, maybe Spyglass Hill, the Honda, PGA National. So instead, we'll look at just short courses. I don't like this as much as the difficult, because a lot of the shorter courses can be easy. Can be real easy relative to par. Think about like the RSM. Let's see if I click on this. Like the Sony is generally easy. The Wyndham is very easy. It's a very short course. So I don't like using short courses as much as the difficult relative to par. But on short courses, which Pebble Beach and Spyglass Hill both are, your top fairways gained players on short courses: Russell Henley, Brendan Todd, Lucas Glover, Siwoo Kim, Tom Kim, Harris English, Andrew Putnam, Sepp Straka, and Sung Jae. And your top greens in regulation gained players on short courses: Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, Alex Noren, Scotty Scheffler, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, Rory, JJ Spawn, Adam Svensson, and Brandon Wu are your top 10 for fairways gained and greens gained on short courses. Again, I am more so thinking about the difficult relative to par. And in fact, let's go ahead and just take a look at moderate and windy, since it seems like that is going to be definitely a factor this week. So in moderate and windy conditions, your top fairways gained players: Russell Henley, he's been up there. That's kind of his game. He's got to hit fairways because he doesn't have a lot of distance, as you see here. Henley and Lucas Glover, Siwoo Kim, Brendan Todd, Tom Kim, Andrew Putnam, Colin Morikawa, Lee Hodges, Patrick Cantlay, Corey Connors. Your top greens gained players in the wind: Scotty Scheffler, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Adam Schenk, Patrick Rodgers, Patrick Cantlay, Lucas Glover, and Xander. So several possibilities to think about in terms of the driving and greens page view in Fantasy National, what metric to use with what filter. I'm leaning towards the difficult relative to par, but I also have all of tomorrow and most of Wednesday to let that forecast solidify, get a real strong feel for how the forecast plays out, and then make the mixed condition model there. But moving on in your research this week, into tomorrow and to Wednesday, I would probably look at difficult relative to par. That's where I'm leaning right now. All right, enough of that. Let's go to scoring very quickly. Last night we saw that in Microsoft Excel, it was really all about the bogey avoidance. You had some pretty strong individual performances in the birdies gained, but really it was about the bogey avoidance. And look here, Justin Rose, Brendan Todd, even Brandon Wu is fairly even in terms of birdies gained and bogeys, slightly leaning birdies now. McCarthy more birdies, Malnati more birdies, Mitchell more bogeys, Pinterest bogey avoidance. Fairly even, but you find that you get some negatives in your birdies gained sooner than you get a negative in your bogey avoidance. If we sort 4th, 29th, 13th, 20th, 2nd, 4th, 7th, your winner's actually a little bit further down in the birdies gained. Whereas if we look at the bogey avoidance, 7th, 4th, 15th, 1st, 20th, 15th, 2nd, 2nd. Now Kevin Roy miscut much higher in the bogey avoidance, or the first miscut is much higher in the bogey avoidance than it was in the birdies gained. But I would argue still much more stronger correlation here other than Kevin Roy with this bogey avoidance. And if we look at 2022, birdies and bogeys gained, it was Tom Hoagie went bananas with the birdies. Actually, most people went bananas with the birdies. first ninth, but 49th, a 65th, a 42nd. You have a miscut fairly high in Max McGreevy. Whoa, what did I do? I clicked the wrong button. Sorry. Pretty, middling to clunker finishes here in the birdies gained. Bogey avoidance, top 15. Winner was third in bogey avoidance. Even though he led in birdies gained, he was still third in bogey avoidance, and it's much more correlating. I don't think looking at Pebble Beach's U.S. Open scoring is going to help nearly as much, because generally speaking, U.S. Open is all about bogey avoidance just because it's set up so difficult. Don't think there's going to be much to add to there. Let's look at, we're getting ready for proximity. So moving to this week's AT&T Pro-Am, when we look at scoring, we're going to look at bogey avoidance. And I myself prefer to look at a scoring metric like bogey avoidance, birdies are better, all that, with a scoring filter to keep it uniform. So we're going to take a look at bogey avoidance when it's difficult. Your top bogey avoiders when rounds are difficult: Scotty Scheffler, Tommy Fleetwood, Jason Day, Xander, Terrell Hatton, Victor Hovland, Wyndham Clark, Matt Fitzpatrick, Patrick Cantlay, Lucas Glover, and Jordan Spieth. All right. Been rambling on for quite a while. We still have a lot to cover, so I'm going to go through this here fairly quickly. Need to get prepped for the proximity. We saw last night in Fantasy National that the overwhelming most prevalent approach shot here was from 100 to 125, especially in relation to the average tour event. Now, you do get a fair amount of 200 pluses just due to the par 5s being attackable and the forced layups of some of these holes, but essentially double the amount of approach shots from 100 to 125 here than at the average tour event. So let's take a look and see if that really does bear out in terms of high leaderboard success. So we look, and Justin Rose was positive, but you got a whole lot of negatives in here. A whole lot of negatives. So nothing right off the bat screams that it's extremely important. You got some cut making in here, but nothing really truly elite. Total procs actually looked like it was fairly solid, but then you have some miscuts up here. This is why I'm very, very transparent that proximity is my weakest analytical statistic. Looking at golf, it just, as a statistician, it just doesn't make a whole lot of frickin' sense. So nothing in 2023 regarding proximity. Looking at 2022, a little bit stronger. Like you see, Tom Hoagie was exceptional at that range. He probably led the category, second in it. But again, you've got some pretty poor finishes here surrounding it. So I just don't see much in terms of proximity, even though so many approach shots come from there. I just don't see it correlating with leaderboard success. With that said, though, if you want to look at the 100 to 125 proximity just due to the amount of the approach shots that come from there, your top proximity players from 100 to 125 yards. Let me double check, make sure that is the range. Yeah, 100 to 125. Your top proximity players from that range: Hideki, Brendan Todd, Adam Hadwin, Lucas Glover, Colin Morikawa, Tom Hoagie, Nick Taylor, Ben On, Eric Cole, and Alex Smalley. All right, let's look at pars 3s, 4s, and 5s very quickly. You see last year, Justin Rose played them well. In fact, majority of your top-end finishers played them really, really well. You do have a few players that were slightly negative, but pretty darn solid here. Your winner led in par 3s. You always like to see that. Does tail off in terms of correlation. If we look at 2022, par 3s, Tom Hoagie played them really, really well. You got a clunker from Brian Stewart, top 15, middling from Vaughn Taylor. Top 25, top 15, top 20. I think par 3s are gonna carry a little bit of weight. So your top par 3 performers in the field this week, the last 36 rounds: Eric Cole, Rory, Colin Morikawa, Brian Harmon, Tommy Fleetwood, Max Homa, Ludwig Aubert, Matt Fitzpatrick, Adam Hadwin, and Hideki. Moving to par 4s. And yes, I am eschewing looking at a specific range. I'm going to save that for Microsoft Excel, just trying to get through this here. I'm going to close out the US Open tab just so I don't get confused. Looking at par 4s, majority of the par 4s are going to come from 400 to 450, but look at the 450 to 5. Most players played those the best last year. In fact, only one player was negative 450 to 500 par 4s, but there's not a lot of them at Pebble Beach. You see the par 4s in general, you're going to have to play them well. 4th, 2nd, 7th, 4th, top 15, 7th. Winner was a little bit further down, but played the 400 to 450s extremely well. Dismiss. All right, good. Stop giving me these notifications. I don't care. All right. Par 4s, you're just going to have to play them fairly well. I think if there's a range, I think it's 400, 450. But if we look at 2022, par 4s again, all of them, everybody was positive in them. A little bit better in the 400 to 450. Yeah, sorted on the par 4s. Your winner led. Top 25, 5th, 6th, 9th. Middling, 3rd, 9th, 9th. Big. 400, 450. Tyler Duncan was good from that range, and then your winner. So, definitely going to look at par 4s here. Your top par 4 performers: Rory, Victor Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, Adam Scott, Bo Hostler, Terrell Hatton, JT Poston, Russell Henley, Xander, and Eric Cole. Lastly, we'll take a look at par 5s. The majority of the par 5s are going to fall 500 and 550 at Pebble Beach. Spyglass Hill, they fall 550 to 6. So it's actually fairly split, but we're probably going to want to focus this range since Pebble Beach has played 3 of the 4 days. Might turn into 5 with all the rain, who knows. But the par 5s, you got to play them. You got to play them well. 11th, 2nd, 13th, 7th, 1st, 7th. Huge amounts of correlation. We saw this last night in the course breakdown. Just extreme amounts of correlation. 6th, 4th, 33rd, 2nd, 9th. Patrick Rogers did have a missed cut. He played the par 5s well. I imagine he didn't do much else well. Just a lot of correlation in these par 5s. So, your top par 5 performers in the field this week: Cameron Young, Stefan Jaeger, Eric Van Rooyen, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa, Scotty Scheffler, Tom Kim, Mac Hughes, Ben Griffin, and JT Poston. All right, with that, let's go ahead and move to Microsoft Excel. Going to go through this somewhat quickly. Let's take a look at last year's mixed condition model, where I was, what I looked at, and how it performed. So right off the bat, Mav McNeely withdrew, started dealing with injury. We had a couple more withdrawals. I don't know if it was injury or poor play, but either way, it's a missed cut. So looking at my top 20, I try to get it in between 4 and 5 missed cuts. 20 to 25% of the top 20, I try to keep it in that range. Well, there's 3 already: 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 40% of my top 20 missed the cut. That's unacceptable. That's very, very bad. As good as my 2023 farmers, or 2023 farmers mixed condition model was, and how solid it was, all these top 10s and stuff, Pebble Beach was almost just as bad. I did have Brendan Todd, who finished runner-up, wasn't overwhelmingly popular. Denny McCarthy was a sub 8% top 5. That was good. But Jordan Spieth did not play well. See, some other players that really rose in my rankings that just didn't perform all that great. Grayson Sigg, of course, Van Rooyen. Ryan Armour he made the cut to a terrible finish. Of course, the winner, Justin Rose, very, very far down in my ranking, 61st. So this was not a good results-based or results-oriented mixed condition model. What did I look at? I had 20% in stroke gain putting. That's a little bit too heavy. So that's something we can change immediately. We're definitely going to be looking at putting, but we can also look at the specific courses that have POA ANA, not just POA, because that's going to also include some POA Trivialis in there. So this is going to improve a little bit, but it's still too heavy in the 20% with 20% in putting. That needs to be backed off. 15% in the short par fives, and we're going to see here in a moment that I do think this is the correct range to look at. So 15% in essentially the par fives. I looked at bogey avoidance on short courses. Makes a lot of sense. I looked at greens on short courses. Again, makes some amount of sense, although I could also think about using difficult to par or perhaps even the wind. We did look at 10% at the specific range of proximity. I just didn't see enough in the prior leaderboards to justify using it this time, so perhaps that is one of the metrics we can cut. 10% in par fours. Based on the prior leaderboards, we need to increase this percentage, considering how important they were. I only had 5% approach. That's absolutely way too low. Need to increase that. 5% around the green makes a lot of sense. It's about what I was thinking. 5% in birdies or better gained on short courses. Okay. 5% scrambling on fast POA greens. Yeah, okay, maybe that's why I had so much in putting, because I was looking at short game. And then 5% par threes. Dang it, right just on your screen. 5% par threes. That needs to be increased, I feel, as well. So a mixed condition model that now, looking back on it, I can understand how it produced such terrible results. I don't think this was a very good mixed condition model looking at Pebble Beach as a whole. Don't have anything to do with the predictive side of it, as with all of these withdrawals, and there's plenty more. It really kind of throws the data off, and skews it quite a bit. So just not going to be looking at the predictive side. But when I looked at it, it was pretty poor as well. So this is just an overall poor mixed condition model. Just overall poor mixed condition model. We have a lot to improve on this year and for this week. So I'll close out of that. We're going to round the show out with the early look file. Now that we think we have a good game. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We need to go to the course detail first. My apologies. So we're going to go look at the course detail for Pebble Beach. So this is the raw numbers of the top 30 finishers the last 5 years, where their strokes gained have been. You can see a lot in the approach, a little bit in the putting. The around the green has really fallen off the past couple of years, and I kind of expect that to be similar this week if indeed we get ball in hand. So I'm going to have quite a bit in approach, I believe. Distance did play somewhat of a factor last year, but you see it was a humongous outlier from the other four. So I just don't see driving distance playing a factor. Look at the greens, 3.44. That's a massive, massive number. It's even higher than the farmers, and that was one of the more key metrics we looked at last week. These greens are just very small. They're hard to hit. Might be a little bit easier with ball in hand this week, but we're going to be looking at a whole lot of greens, and the data backs it up. Looking at scoring, it's very rare that you get bogey avoidance outweighing birdies gained in a raw number perspective, but you're getting it here. Now, it's not as consistent. Well, I say that. Birdies gained has like a real low outlier and a couple of high ones. Like, it's all over the place. Bogey avoidance is generally speaking, a little bit more consistent. Do have a somewhat of a high outlier here, but bogey avoidance, that's what we're going to be focused on this week. Bogey avoidance on probably difficult instead of short courses. And honestly, we might be looking at double bogey avoidance a little bit. I admit to do that. I forgot, trying to rush through it, because we even have a low outlier here. If we remove that, just going to cheat a little bit. Double bogey avoidance gets, as important as bogey avoidance. So that is something I will definitely devote some time to tomorrow, is looking at some double bogey avoidance and seeing if that perhaps makes its way into the mixed condition model. But looking at the detail is really going to give us a great idea when we consider par 3s, 4s, and 5s. When we take a look at these specific ranges of holes, for example, 1.54 in par 3s is a strokes gained total. The highest is 175 to 200, but it's only 0.6. So you're only getting 40% of your strokes gained in your par 3s in this particular range. That does not lend itself to being important enough to look at by themselves. You see the 200 to 225 are just all over the place. An extremely high outlier here, an extremely low outlier here. The 175 to 200 have been fairly consistent for the most part. If there's a range you want to look at, it's probably this one, but I'm just going to be looking at total par 3s because, again, only 40% of your par 3 strokes gained come in one range. Now, the majority of them do come in only two ranges, so you could argue to only look at these two ranges. I don't like that, though, because you do have some holes that play to these lengths as well. So we're just going to be looking at par 3s. Par 4s, a lot more of the same, to be honest with you. 1.6 of a 4.2, you're still not getting anywhere close to 50%. Now, look at how consistent the 400 to 450s have been. 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.58. It's been very consistent the past 5 years. But you still get a fair amount of holes that are measuring from 354. So, once again, it looks like we're just looking at par 4s in totality, considering we're not getting to that 50% threshold in the most important length of par 4s. That changes in the par 5s. You got a 2 point, I'm gonna say 2.5. Almost 2/3 of your strokes gained par 5s are coming in one range. And that's why we were looking last year at the 500 to 550, and that's why I'm leaning again looking at just the 500 to 550, because with Pebble Beach being played 3 of the 4 rounds and 3 of the 4 par 5s measuring to this length at Pebble Beach, I mean, you see par 5s 500 550 is at a 1.62. The entirety of the par 3s are a 1.54. So the par 5s just of these lengths are contributing more strokes gained to players who are finishing in the top 30 than the entirety of the par 3s. That's why we're going to look at this range. I know we looked at all par 5s when we went through Fantasy National, but that's why if you are a member at Fantasy National, I highly suggest you be one, and you can focus on this range in your own research. 500, 550. And then proximities, there's not a lot here. This number is actually pretty low for 200 plus. So 100 to 125 this number is fairly high, but look at the last 2 years, which we looked at in fantasy or in the prior leaderboards. It's actually the 2 lowest years it's been in the past 5. So is that a trend, or is this kind of a 2-year blip? I don't know. But that's why it doesn't appear the 100 to 125 were very important, because they've been 2 straight years of very low importance. So that's the benefit of looking at the extreme detail of a course, is the par 3s and the par 4s and the par 5s especially, looking at where the strokes gained. Gosh dang it, I went all the way up to the Fortinet. I didn't mean to. Looking at where the strokes gained in a particular par falls, and see if you can single out any ranges like the 500 550 par 5s. All right, now we're going to end the show off with the early look file. We got a decent feel for the metrics that are going to be important this week. So this is performance the last 5 years at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am and how players have performed at the particular metrics. So, for example, in the past 5 years, your top strokes gained approach players at Pebble Beach specifically. Kevin Hewitt's only 1 year. Looking for players who have played it often. Brian Harmon. Look at Jordan Spieth, 5 for 5, also a former champion. Wyndham Clark. Adam Hadwin's 2 for 3, has been very good with his irons here. Patrick Cantlay, 3 for 3, average finish of 6th. His irons have been very good here. And Homa, and Nick Taylor, and Taylor Moore. So there's your top approach players. Not to ignore the putting. Our top putters at these Pebble Beach Poa Annua greens the past 5 years. There's Denny McCarthy, Tom Hoge, your champion 2 years ago, Max Homa, the #1 putter on Poa Annua in general, Brendan Todd, Andrew Putnam. Siwoo Kim has not had a lot of success here, but has putt very well. Matthew Neesmith is 4 for 4. I think he's an alternate. Cantlay has putt well here. It makes sense being a California guy. McNeely, lots of success here. Nick Taylor, former champion as well here. Seamus Power and Malnati and J-Day. All right. Our top greens gained players in the past 5 years, specifically at Pebble Beach. Those players, look, #1, Nick Taylor. Huge amounts of success at Pebble Beach in general. 5 for 5, average finish inside the top 20. Leading in greens gained. Victor Hovland, Mav McNeely, lots of success here. Wyndham Clark and Patrick Cantlay. Brandon Wu, Jordan Spieth, Adam Hadwin, J-Day, a lot of success here. Harmon, 2 for 2. Cam Davis, 3 for 3. Taylor Moore, 2 for 2. So there's your top greens gained players. Gosh dang it. Looking at bogey avoidance. Bogeys avoided. But Zayden Hoot's only 1 year. There's Max Homa. There's J-Day. There's Nick Taylor. Taylor Moore. Matt McNeely. Smalley, a little bit less in terms of success, but has been very good with bogey avoidance. There's Patrick Cantlay and Hadwin and Hoge again and Brendan Todd. All very strong in the bogey avoidance. Going to skip the 3s. I want to go to the 4s and the par 5s, 500 to 550. So your top par 4 performers the past 5 years, specifically at Pebble Beach: J-Day, Taylor Moore, Nick Taylor again, Tom Hoge again, Cantlay, Spieth, McCarthy, Justin Rose, your defending champion, Braden Wu, 2 for 3, McNeely, 3 for 3, average finish inside the top 15, Adam Shanks, 3 for 4. Now, nothing extraordinary in terms of finishes, but he is 3 for 4. Cam Davis, 3 for 3. Keith Mitchell, 3 for 5. And then lastly, we'll look at par 5s, 500 to 550 yards. And your top performers at those: Wyndham Clark leading. Jaeger, look at that though. He's 0 for 2. He's played this range of par 5s extremely well, but has no success to show for it. Seamus Power, 3 for 4. Adam Hadwin, Spieth, Homa. Siwoo Kim, not a lot of success. Played this range of par 5s well. Shank, Hostler, J-Day, McNeely. So there you go. There's a look at some of the players who have performed the best specifically at Pebble Beach the past 5 years at those various metrics we think are going to be the most important. That's going to do it for the show this evening. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. for watching, listening, supporting the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It's always appreciated. I love what I do, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of some deep dive into sports statistics, trying to help us win a little bit of money in the process. Quick reminder that the DFS Tactics show will be at 10 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. I have a scheduling conflict, can't get around it. So the DFS Tactics show will be pushed back an hour, 10 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. And of course, if you want to see the research that I posted around the past 7 or 8 winners at Pebble Beach, then go give me a follow over at social media and go check that out. I give you the pattern and the players in the field this week who qualify. But thanks again for all the support. It's very, very appreciated. For all of the wagers you've made so far this week for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.